Joining us now, Charlotte City Councilman Malcolm Graham. Councilmember, good to see you again.
I'm glad to be here this morning.
All right, so bring us up to speed. Where do we stand right now on the I-77 toll lane project? Because the understanding most of us have is we're in a paused situation. What does that mean?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. This situation is very fluid, right? And so we are not pausing. We have NCDOT has delayed sending out the RFP from March to the end of June. And in the meantime, they're doing this. One, the Secretary of Transportation was in town 2 weeks ago, met with a wide variety of community leaders, neighborhood leaders, getting their perspective on the expansion. We had a transportation committee meeting where NCDOT came once again to make a presentation to the committee. They also met with all the council members individually about the projects themselves. They made some commitments. One, to lay the RFP, that they would require the 4 shortlist developers to come to town to meet with the community as they put their proposals together for consideration for the project themselves. They would open up a community engagement center where they would really redo their engagement strategy with the community. I believe that it was really done poorly going back to October. They've taken a look at a wide variety of other options. They will now do a study within the next 90 days about drilling underground. They made a commitment to show their homework in terms of why the elevated option was chosen versus others. And so this 90-day period really is an opportunity for them to reestablish an engagement strategy with the community. As I said earlier, I thought the engagement was done very poorly right from the very start.
Malcolm, I'm curious to the elevated design, the drawbacks of that, what people are saying, and why you think that discussion wasn't had earlier.
Yeah, the elevated design was one of the 2 options that was first presented to the community. I felt both options were dead on arrival. Certainly the first option impacted a wide variety of neighborhoods, cemetery, parks, etc. They discarded that one and chose the elevated option, which still has its drawbacks, right? I don't want to have environmental concerns, air pollution, dumping down onto neighborhoods, nor do I want to disturb the skyline that we have. Charlotte has a beautiful skyline, and I want to preserve that for future generations of Charlotteans, as well as other factors. And so both designs were dead on arrival. Many neighborhood leaders believe the same thing as well. And so by having the 4 independent developers come to town who are all competing for the project themselves, it's only designed 10 to 15%. They can hear from the residents in the community about what their preference are and include that in their proposals to NCDOT. They all start with the same factor, right? You can't move the highway. I believe that history matters in terms of how the highway was built, that displaced Black and brown communities historically. We can't repeat those mistakes. And then lastly, if you haven't driven on 77 South, there's a lot of congestion, a lot of crashes that has to be solved for. And so it's not a matter of if we expand the highway, it's how we do it. And no matter what design is chosen, whether it's design A, B, C, D, E, F, or G, there will be impact.
I guess that brings me to the point of where it seems like this is a bunch of bad choices. Either you elevate it, or you widen it, or you don't do it, or you pay billions of dollars to put it underground. The way you're outlining it is bad, worse, and worse than the worst. Is there going to be a compromise here that people can actually, you think, get on board with?
Well, again, there's going to have to be some truth telling, right? And one of the things I try to be as an elected official is tell the community what they need to know versus what they want to hear. And the bad news here, as you illustrated, is that I'm not sure there will be any good choices that will leave the community not impacted by the choice that is made, right? Whether it's a new, even if you go underground, right, there will be impact, right? And so it is really understanding the history of the highway itself. History matters. making sure that the neighborhood leaders and the community is informed about and are at the table making the decisions, right? That's why it was so important to me to have Secretary Johnson in town to talk directly to neighborhood leaders about their concerns, their fears, and their aspirations in terms of how we move forward.
Let me follow up there. Specifically, a year out from right now, give me some examples. What do you think would be fair solutions going forward?
A year out from now, I think the NCDOT would have probably chosen a preferred developer to develop the site. That developer would probably have, of course, his outline, his proposal for how he would do it. And hopefully that proposal is being brought forward to the community with the community at the table helping them design the outcome for the expansion of the highway. Again, I think we owe a responsibility to future generations of Charlotte teens to do something with the highway, because congestion is an issue. It's an issue today, and certainly a year from now it will be an issue, and 5 years from now it will be an issue if we don't take action. And so I think you're absolutely right, Ben. It's just I believe there's no good options, because once again, you can't move the highway. The highway is where it's at. It's a fixed object, and we have to do something within the confined footprints without encroaching on those neighborhoods that Macquarie Heights, Lincoln Heights, others. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and there's going to be a lot of compromising and give and take along the way. No one will leave this process feeling happy.
I do want to go back to the concept of the underground tunnels. I know that's what a lot of people in those impacted neighborhoods are pushing for, but of course that is a more expensive option than some of the other ones that have been floated. Is there a world where there's more federal funding pulled for something like that? Is there a world where city transit funds, sales tax funds are pulled for something like that?
The short answer is I don't know. It's a state project. I think it needs to remain a state project for sure, with federal support and assistance. NCDOT is currently doing a study at the behalf of the City Council and neighborhood leaders to really show their homework in reference to an underground option, something they have not done thus far. I think that's really important. Obviously, cost is going to be a deciding factor in that, but I don't think there should be a local funding remedy for it. I think it should remain a state project with federal support, and so that we can use our local dollars for other local projects. In addition, one of the things that we also have to do is really maintain a good working relationship with NCDOT, because notwithstanding we're talking about the highway expansion now, there's a wide variety of other state projects that we're working with them on throughout the city, Steel Creek, Mountain Island Lake, Ballantyne, etc., that the relationship between the city and the NCDOT needs to remain strong. It doesn't mean that we can agree to disagree on big projects like 77 South, but we also need to make sure that we need them for other projects throughout the city. So that relationship has to remain strong based on facts and truth, and the ability to agree to disagree at certain points.
What would your message be to neighbors, in some of those West Side neighborhoods? I live there, my neighborhood's impacted, but what would your message be to some of those neighbors? Your honest, candid message of those who are wanting to stop this?
Well, I think the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Black Political Caucus has a lawsuit that's currently making its way through the courts. We need to see where that goes. Sustain Charlotte has a study that they're doing in terms of challenging the community with different design options. I think they should do that. I think they should engage NCDOT in terms of working with the 4 shortlist developers, because those 4 companies now are competing for the work, right? To making sure that as they design their proposal, that they do it with the community input in mind, that we should work with them, and that we also should begin to talk specifically about community impacts, right? There's $100 million on the table for programs and projects based on the impact that this project will have on the community. I think we need to race towards that, talk about those impacts. And then lastly, I think we need to narrowly define where the impact will occur, right? And so if we know that on the 11-mile stretch that that Johnson C. Smith, for an example, is going to be impacted, then we need to have conversations right now with Johnson C. Smith or Wilmore right now where the impact that we know at a 10 to 15% design stage right now, where those impacts will occur, and begin to provide resources and services and community benefits because of the impacts.
But do you think there's a conversation here to be had about stopping this, or is it more of a question of, okay, what is a acceptable compromise, and we're not going to be able to stop it?
Well, I think the courts will decide whether or not the Black Political Caucus has a case to stop it. I think the CARPO, which is, again, the regional planning organization, that decision rests in their jurisdiction, not the city of Charlotte or Mecklenburg County. So you got federal government involved, state government involved, local governments, city, county, CARPO, and so stopping it, it may be problematic, but we'll see.
Okay.
Is
Sure.
there anything we haven't asked you about? I mean, this is a complicated.
Well, I think the
complicated
thing
issue.
I think the thing is that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I think that it's really important that neighborhoods continue to do what they're doing now, advocating for their communities. I support that. I'm a district representative, so I stand with my neighborhood leaders. But I think it's really important for me also to be brutally honest about where we are and give them the facts, and then they can make their decision based on facts and not emotions, right? And the fact of the matter is we can't move the highway. The history of how the highway was built certainly matters and should be taken into consideration. There is a congestion issue on the highway that we need to solve for. No matter what the design is, again, A through Z, there will be impact. How do we minimize the impact, and how do we provide community benefits for the community and the neighborhoods that may be impacted? And if the goal is to stop it, and then that's an issue that I think we as a community, the council, the commissioners, neighborhood leaders, CARPO, it's a very complicated decision to make. But again, that's why there's a lawsuit, and that's why people are challenging the direction of this is going. Lastly, and I'll be quiet after this, I admit that NCDOT fumbled the ball with the community engagement right going back to last October when they first announced these plans. They did a poor job of communicating what they were doing, why they were doing it, and to what extent. And they really are trying to play catch up. And as you know, in the football game, when you fumble the ball, sometimes you lose it. And I think they have lost a lot of credibility that they need to make up for.
Okay, then I got to push back on that and ask, do you think City Council fumbled the ball in some respect? I mean, this has not been a new issue. We've known about this for more than a decade. Do you think city leaders should have been more proactively out in front of this in recent years?
No.
Okay.
We've been studying this for 14 years, the development of this proposal. When we gave the okay to move forward with it, I guess in 2024, we did so just like Harpo did, without any designs other than we believed that it needed to move forward. These were state funding. When the community found out about the designs, the council found out at the same time as well. And so I think now it's just reacting to what the state is doing, the same way the state did not communicate effectively and efficiently with the community. They did not communicate effectively and efficiently with the city council and local leaders as well.
And not to gang up on them, but because there's nobody here from the state to defend themselves, but this is not their first go around. Anybody who's been here around long enough knows how the situation went north of town with the toll lanes. And that was not good. So
this is not Wilson or Rockingham. This is Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and how they engage is significantly different than some smaller towns. And you're absolutely right. They've been here before.
we've been down this toll lane before. All right. City Councilman Malcolm Graham. Councilmember, thanks as always. We appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, more Flashpoint after this. Joining us now, Councilman Ed Driggs. Council member, good to see you again. You are sort of the go-to person, like it or not, on council when it comes to transit. Level set with us. Where do we stand realistically when it comes to the I-77 toll lane project?
So, good morning, Ben. We've come down a road. It started all the way back in 2014 when this project was first put in the pipeline for state funding. We then had a deliberation on the regional planning organization talking about whether it should be a public-private partnership. And then in 25, the maps were circulated that would indicated what it would look like. And at that point, a huge protest erupted and sort of went viral. And we are now wrestling with the situation of how to be responsive to the minority neighborhood that is impacted by this while still preserving the benefit of the project.
And do you see there's a way forward here that will be a fair or a favorable compromise for all those involved? Or is this just going to be one of those situations, there's going to be some tough decisions made, whether they're made this month or next year, and some people are just not going to like it?
So I've been upfront talking to the West Charlotte Coalition and other parties about the fact that there is a huge gap right now between the position of the neighbors and their allies and the need for this road. And so I kind of warned them, we're going to do everything we can. NCDOT is leaning in to be responsive. Some people will not be happy when we're done.
That said, are there, do you think there are concessions that are going to be made, and honestly, frankly, should be made, to make this a more fair, more equitable, frankly, more appealing plan to more people in Charlotte?
So we got ourselves into a bad place because the way NCDOT handled it was regarded by the local residents as being disingenuous. They were told, they thought, late about what was going on. So we're having to recover from a trust issue that was established the way all this came down. At the same time, NCDOT now is leaning in to respond to all the issues that have been raised, to offer community benefits and other advantages, to consider options that basically impact the neighborhood the least. So I think we're at a good starting point for a constructive conversation, but it'll be a little while before we can settle down and everybody's comfortable.
Who do you blame for the, not asking you to throw anybody under the bus, but who do you blame for the current situation as it is? Only because I ask that because I think about one of the first public meetings that happened 6 months ago, neighborhood meetings, and I saw it happening, and I reached out to DOT and said, hey, can we get an interview from you guys before this meeting so we can sort of be out front, knowing that this was not going to probably go over well in a lot of neighborhoods. I mean, that should not be a big surprise to any stakeholder. Are you surprised the way this is sort of unfolded?
It's hard to point a finger because the process that NCDOT follows is prescribed by NEPA. It's a federally mandated process. They were going through the steps, a long process. It doesn't end until late next year. And in the course of that, they then came to us about the public-private partnership. And I think our action on that, the CRTPO, the planning organization's action on that, was a little bit of a catalyst. So when people saw those maps, which they would have gotten anyway, they kind of panicked. And I do think that, and I'll take some responsibility for this, I don't think anybody saw the kind of uproar that we have seen now taking shape. It wasn't there. It was absolutely silent. I had no messages. There was no communication with council or with NCDOT.
You're talking about back like, what was it, 10, 12 years ago or something like that?
No, I'm talking about 2024.
So 2 years ago, okay.
During that period when I was the chair of the committee and CRTPO was looking at the question of whether it should be a public-private partnership, that's all we talked about. But at that point in time, there was no indication that we were going to see a backlash like this. And maybe my knowledge of the geography of that part of Charlotte wasn't good enough to kind of raise a flag in my mind. So I would say that maybe NCDOT community relations or something might have recognized the possibility, the likelihood of something of this kind. But then when we voted, when CRTPO voted and council voted, and the storm erupted later, we were all in an awkward position because it looked as if we had done this knowingly. And we hadn't. There was just no evidence of the kind of resistance that we've seen.
What are the updated conversations like in council? Because I know there was a moment when that pushback began, and that was an awkward position, that there were some council members who wanted to put a full stop on things. What's the update between council?
So I think the engagement by the Secretary and NCDOT, the discussions about community benefits, the example of Charleston, where a similar situation was kind of very generously addressed, I think that's got us to a better place now. In the background is still the question of whether the council could instruct me as their CRTPO representative to go to a CRTPO meeting and make a motion. And the most likely one I've heard about is a pause rather than kill it. But then when NCDOT said we will defer the beginning of our RFP process for 3 months, that was interpreted as a concession and an accommodation toward a pause. So it's a little unsettled. I'm not sure. I don't see an imminent threat that we're going to be called upon to go back and use that channel to try to impose Charlotte's will on the CRTPO, which I think would have bad consequences.
I think that's a big piece of this entire project too, is the state's involved, CRTPO's involved. This might have federal implications if this were to not continue. And so you as the representative for CRTPO kind of have your hands on a lot of things right now.
So I'm in an interesting position on this council, right? I'm the only elected Republican in Mecklenburg County, anywhere, you know, school board, et cetera. I don't regard that as being important, but other people might identify me, not to mention being an old white guy and so on. So
you said it, not us.
I know, and I'm being upfront about it, right? And so when I engage with people in West Charlotte, I have to kind of expect a certain kind of skepticism about my motives. And then when I'm the only guy that raises his hand and says we are not going to take that CRTPO action tonight a few weeks ago, I think that caused me to get singled out. And really all I'm trying to do is protect the interests of those neighborhoods and not allow something to happen that will work to the detriment of everybody.
Because there's a lawsuit out there, you know, suggesting it should be stopped. And I think you say, and a lot of other people say, stopping this is perhaps not in the best interest of most of the parties involved. Pausing it, changing it, tweaking it, sure, all those things. Stopping it is a whole other issue.
That would be terrible, right? It's a $3.5 billion project. We have $700 million of state money available to help fund it. The rest is paid for through this partnership with the private developer, the contractor. And that corridor needs attention. The accident rate is high, pollution is high because of how slow the traffic moves. Many hours of people's lives are spent, you know, working their way through I-77. So there is a very big need in the city to accomplish these improvements there. And I think what we're now working on in particular is how to mitigate the impact and make clear to the people who are affected by it that this is not an example of disregard for the black community, because that's how it's seen. That road was put there before, historically, under very bad circumstances, and black neighborhoods were chopped through, people were pushed out. And there is a memory. I hear the pain in people's voices when I talk to them about their parents and their grandparents and how they get treated like this is the obvious place to stomp on a neighborhood. That's not what's happening right now. What's happening at the moment is these plans are being worked on that road because of where it is. Now, it got there for bad reasons, but the fact is right now you can't widen that road and move it somewhere else.
It's there.
So we're trying to do this in a modern, sensitive way and avoid any suggestion that there is an indifference towards the black community.
What do you think a year out from now, what do you think would be a fair, as good as it gets outcome when it comes to this project?
So at my committee meeting, the Transportation Planning Development Committee on Council, I told NCDOT representatives, we need you to write down a list of everything you've heard, the concerns you've heard, and the demands that people have made, and take a position. Like, let's get accountable in this conversation, and from that will come the tangible possibilities. But I think in general, those tangible possibilities are very generous. So I'm hopeful that anybody who is disrupted by this is going to end up feeling okay and will be better off afterwards, and that we can avoid the stigma of abuse of the minority community.
And tangibly speaking, what are you talking? Give us some examples. I mean, things come to mind about, making these more pedestrian friendly, like interchanges and things like that, or adding green space. But what are those things that would make concessions meaningful to people?
So again, mitigation of some of the impacts, and the Board of County Commissioners heard where the greenways and parks would be affected. Fact is, NCDOT has a plan to replace or offset those impacts, so I think that's being done. But what I'm hoping for is that there are, for example, training programs for labor, because a $3.5 billion project is going to generate a lot of jobs, and many of those jobs could benefit the larger African-American community along with others. So that would be one thing. If you look at the Charleston example, they had ways of acknowledging the history of the neighborhood and being respectful of that. And then when it comes down to homeowners, as you may know, the current proposal is to put it up in the air. And that was developed because people said, we don't want you taking homes out of McCrory Heights, and we don't want you invading the cemetery that is also nearby. But then other people complained, but we don't like that because of the blocking the view and so on. Yeah. What is going to happen, though, is the contractors who are bidding on this are going to engage in conversations with residents, and they're going to bring to them everything that has been done in this country and internationally in the way of road technology, so that at least distrust about whether or not all of the possibilities have been explored, I hope, will be dispelled. And therefore, I think rather than a year from now, I'm looking forward to an outcome that doesn't completely satisfy everybody, but then with the passage of time will be accepted as having been fair and respectful.
And transparent.
And transparency is an issue. Distrust is an issue.
Sure.
And there's so many examples I've heard in conversations with people on the West Side about disappointments that they have experienced. I point out to them that sometimes the disappointments are from people they elected. Yeah. And that's why when I talk to them, and in general on council, I tend to be pretty blunt at times, because I think it's wrong to sugarcoat things or to try to make it look like something is attainable that is really not within our power to deliver. And that's why I say on this occasion, I hope we get to a place where there aren't many people who are still dissatisfied, and a lot of people look back later and say that that was fair.
Very complicated issue. Is there anything that we haven't addressed yet you think that we're missing or that people need to know?
I would allude to the legal debate that's going on, right? So there's been a lot of discussion among the lawyers about what CRTPO can and can't do. And in my mind, there are two issues there. One of them is the road was put in the pipeline in 2014. It's been there for 12 years. That was an action by CRTPO that the federal government requires in order for this to be on the state's project list. Then there was the recent CRTPO action, which was about the P3. A lot of the discussion has been whether legally the CRTPO can rescind the decision that it made in 2024 about the funding, when in fact, if you want to cancel the project, the thing you need to look at is the 2014 initial authorization. I don't think it's actually a legal question. In fact, if you dig into the weeds on the legal stuff, it's hard to arrive at a conclusion. We said in 2024, we will not interfere any further in NCDOT's pursuit of this project. That was as to the P3. So, we didn't make a promise that we wouldn't talk about the 2014 thing, and if we did, what would it mean? The Secretary said the road is going to get built, but if the CRTPO took it out of the project pipeline, the legal status would be in question because the feds require that it be put there. So I've looked at all of that. I've seen the stuff flying back and forth, and what I'm saying to myself is we need to understand that this is actually more of a social issue than a legal one. And we need to understand that the protest has risen to the level of being a referendum on race in Charlotte. And I think if we're sensitive to that perception and we respond to those concerns, that we're more likely to achieve a good outcome.
One part of it's an acknowledgement of how horribly it was handled in the past. And that might have been decades ago for the folks in McCrory Heights, but still those scars, as you know well,
yes,
remain.
Yes.
And for good reason. Ed Driggs, Councilman, Charlotte City Council. Council member, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me today. Thanks.
Right. More Flashpoint after this. Welcome back to Flashpoint here on WCNC Plus. Before we leave, we just wanted to say we understand this is a complicated issue with a 1,000 sides, probably more than that. And we've talked to the neighbors involved and the Black Political Caucus as well. We know they're filing a lawsuit. We got these two council members in the same room together because we wanted to hear from people who are going to be making a decision on this in the months ahead. And of course, we'll be sharing other viewpoints as we do every day on WCNC Charlotte.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is going to air Monday night, probably in the middle of the council meeting. And so I'm curious to see if anything, I'll probably be there at that council meeting.
There you go.
Curious to see if, next time you and I chat, there's any updates from that. But this is going to be an issue that we're discussing for, years to come, regardless of what iteration of the plan comes to fruition. It sounds like the plan is happening. And so this is not going away anytime soon. And it was interesting, though, that there are many points that weren't reflected today. Interesting to see what our leadership is thinking at this point, because it's changed a lot.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. We'll see you back here for the next Flashpoint next week.